everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we recently went into how there are 50 million empty homes and apartments in China at the moment, and you know, some people are commenting, that's old news. Well, no, it's repetitive news. It's news that has happened before and now it is happening again. Doesn't mean that it's old news. This continues to perpetuate as we see. Yeah, this massive debt bubble, it's a worldwide problem. Anyway, China is on the precipice of something I can't even explain. It's so incredibly massive. I just want to go into this Zero Hedge article, John, because this is another example of what we've been talking about for so long. And as it says, Hong Kong home market headed for big correction. And as the article says, back in October, Hong Kong's housing market suffered its first decline in 29 months, only days after HSBC became the first commercial bank to raise its prime lending rate. Taking a hint from the Federal Reserve and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority in ending a decade of cheap money. In that time, Hong Kong retained the world's hottest housing market, but there is new evidence now of an imminent slowdown. New home sales this month have tumbled to levels not seen since first quarter 2016, according to Midland Realty data. And you can see the chart here. Meanwhile, home prices have fallen for 2 straight months, the longest losing streak since 2016, according to the Senta City Leading Index. And here's another chart. Bloomberg said other reports showed deteriorating sales at Country Garden, the 6th largest property developer in China, is fueling speculation that the world's most expensive housing market is headed for a deep correction. Last week, home prices experienced the largest decline since March 2016, falling 1.3% week on week, the data showed. From August's peak, home prices have dipped about 5%. Goldman Sachs Group Inc. has forecasted a 15 to 20% correction into 2020 as the Hong Kong Monetary Authority is expected to raise rates in tandem with the Fed, according to a research report released Monday. And another chart, no shortage of charts in this article. Here are some more signs the storm clouds are gathering over the Hong Kong housing market. Mortgage applications recorded the most significant month-on-month drop in 20 years in September, according to Central Mortgage Broker Limited. The number of applications slid 56% to 7,977, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority reported. Here's another chart. The number of transactions for luxury homes is now the worst on record. And another chart, here we go. Hong Kong has for decades been one of the most stable places in the world. However, with one interest rate hike and the threat of an imploding real estate market in 2019, it seems like regime change is imminent. So, John, let's go into this. We've seen this fascio-commie state, technocratic Orwellian, I don't even know what you can call it anymore. It's a strange animal, but there's a huge problem with this massive debt bubble in China. The real estate market is one of the most manipulated I've ever seen anywhere in the world, and it could lead to a domino effect. What do you think about this most recent news out of Hong Kong?
Josh, it just shows you that the paper bubble is coming apart. It's been printed too much money in the world. That is what's happening here. And of course, Hong Kong, they're seeing it with actually putting up the interest rate, the 0.25% or whatever they did. That's what they do now. Because there is so little effect, so little push in the interest rates will actually have an outcome on the economy. And that's how indebted we are today. And of course, Hong Kong is a hub for international investment because it used to be a colony, of course, of the United Kingdom. And now, of course, the Chinese are trying to get full government control over Hong Kong, and there's a big fight forth and back, of course, and they're trying to kill, Hong Kong bookstore sellers that are selling books that is not approved by the communist government. There's a huge push to take over Hong Kong fully with all the legislation and everything that China has, because Hong Kong is way freer than, of course, China itself, because it's a communist cesspool. But I wanted to show the viewers some numbers here that will be very interesting, because this has a lot to do with the bubble in Hong Kong, Josh. And this is actually the money that commercial banks in these countries have borrowed to Hong Kong citizens. So now let's take a look here, Josh, and see where it's at. The total number, it's quite baffling. It's $820 billion that have been borrowed to the tiny little place of Hong Kong. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And then, of course, we can take a look at some of the biggest risks to Hong Kong. And that is by far, it's the UK, as I said. UK used to have it as a colony. And the UK has $454 billion counterparty risk against Hong Kong businesses and real estate, whatever that debt is. So that is huge. That is massive. The UK, which is in a property bubble itself, because they pumped too much debt into the economy, is again out there being lending mass amounts of money to the banks. There's a couple of other big lenders to them as well. I'm going to go through the whole list here so people can actually see that it's not just the UK that might get hit by all this. It's a whole wide array, and this is why one problem in the world, one little place, could cause effect all across the world, and that's what we saw with the only $13 billion defaulted debt in during the 2008 in the housing crisis. And now we're seeing bubbles that are at least 10 to 20 times bigger a lot of times. And of course, on top of that, they have all these derivatives that they created. Now, let me go quickly through the list here with the biggest countries. Australia owns $18.49 billion. Canada owns $4.1 billion. Chinese Taipei, which is Taiwan, owes $37.71 billion. France, $35.08. Germany 14.9, Japan 91.59, and then you have South Korea 13.1, Netherlands 15.6, and then of course you have the United States with 80.42 billion. So that is a lot of banks that might have a lot of risk into the Hong Kong market and in what's going on in there. So that's why you will see the central banks will try to prop this up, Josh, in order to save, because look at all the web of debt, as I call it, and all the money that have been borrowed to almost $1 trillion been borrowed to the tiny little place of Hong Kong.
I mean, that's all the central banks do. They prop up that which they have originally collapsed, and then they prop it up some more. It just goes in a perpetual circle. And I mean, this is something that I find incredible, is that China is so heavily immersed in debt. I mean, they want to become the next big superpower. They very well will be. I do believe there's a good chance, at least for a short period of time, though they will collapse. They will be a mess, one of the biggest superpowers in the world by far, and take over the U.S. as a world reserve currency. I do believe that that is very much a real possibility. But I mean, this is the same country that is, loaning vast amounts of money, like the IMF is, to countries in Africa, for example, buying them up. And, it's more money they're loaning to these countries than these countries can pay back. They're getting other countries into debt, but they're in vast amounts of debt. And then they're competing against other debt-based systems to become the best in the debt world. It's just sewage. It's complete sewage. It's criminality. It's fraud. And, it's just another example of how centralization begets more centralization, more servitude, because if people are in debt servitude, they are subservient to those powers, those cartels, governments, banks, central banks, all bankrupt, by the way, all spoofing and manipulating markets, all involved in the hobby, I guess you could say, of enslaving the populace. And this is something that people need to understand. These stories, they should scare you, and they should scare you into learning and becoming confident in your knowledge and breaking free from this system, because that is what it's all about, is breaking free from this system. John, as we kind of start to wrap it up, because we're running out of time, China, how is this sustainable? Can they possibly sustain themselves much longer?
Josh, China has to print a mass amounts of money in order to fight, in order to become the world superpower. It has to print more money than the United States, and then have everybody take in that currency as, a medium of exchange of trade. that's what they got to do in order to fight back. And then, of course, they have a middle class that they're trying to indebt massively. And they've done that before. The Sung Dynasty, back in 1024, when they started to issue credit, they had a massive economic boom and a huge indebtment of the population. And then that debt collapsed in on itself, of course. So they're not new to this, Josh. They've done it. Like China has done this
they
so
are
many
the
times
original
before.
people that did it.
They just have they actually invented this paper currency system and the printing of money. But of course, like through that whole lifetime, they've been doing it about 5 to 6 times. No, probably more than 10 times throughout history that they printed money, gone bankrupt, printed money, go bankrupt, or print money and got into war. That's the same as bankruptcy. It's just to cover the bankruptcy. But that's what they've been doing, Josh. And of course, the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, which is the HSBC, it's probably one of the most corrupt banking institutions in the world. And I think it surpasses both Deutsche Bank and our favorite bank over here in North America, Wells Fargo, Josh. HSBC is beyond criminal in so many aspects that they're doing. And you can hear commercials here in Canada now how I didn't know how massive I could grow in the world economy and how much debt I could get from the HSBC and their advisors. This bank is probably one of the best ones in the world at being a loan shark to the world's corporations. And of course,
John, I mean, don't you want subprime mortgages and mortgage-backed securities and reverse mortgages and collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps and all the same stuff that we saw in 2007 all over again? Isn't that great? Shouldn't we all get involved? Shouldn't we get in a 1,000-person lineup to get in line to get subprime mortgages like we've seen in recent days?
Yeah, well, if we want to save the economy, of course we need to do that. We need to get in more debt, load up, stack up on debt. We should have, I think we might see a huge another terrorist attack soon because this is a bubble of epic proportion. Remember 2001, Josh, 9/11? Think about at the timing that had. It was right after the most gigantic stock bubble in history. Isn't that like kind of interesting? I know you just interviewed Richard Gage and
Barbara Honegger,
this other lady about 9/11, and they had some breakthroughs in that. But, it's interesting how that false flag came right after 2001.
Yeah, well, this is about distract the populace, scare the populace, give them a solution like the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution, repeat, and then bring us in circles for eternity, which is just the exact paradigm that we get from government, banks, and central banks. It's this attempt to prolong the inevitable collapse, prolong the inevitable servitude that comes with the collapse. And of course, war is going to be propped up. Of course, there's going to be vast amounts of debt and poverty and destruction. And then they'll come in and say, well, we need more of that, the same thing that caused the problem, to solve the problem. That is the paradigm of collectivism and statism and this massive cartel that's worldwide. So John, as we wrap it up, what's your bottom line?
Well, the bottom line here, Josh, is I actually want to mention another. You were saying that they just increased their interest rates. Well, another nation that has a hyper bubble right now that is actually popping before they even have raised any interest rates is Australia. Australia hasn't done anything yet to actually raise the interest rate.
Another cashless system.
Yeah, and they're failing. And of course, I want to just talk quickly about that since I'm talking to an Asian audience. If you want to understand what's going on in Asia, you need to look at places like Australia. And I did a great report, a 49-page report in great detail about the economy, everything going on there, including the banking system and all the risks involved. Because that's if you're in Hong Kong, you want to see what's going on. Take a look at Australia. It's just down, just a little bit further south than you guys, and it's a massive property bubble there as well. But this is happening all across the world, Josh. We need to exit out of this system, and we need to not be dependent on the banks because they would just continue. They would need to print more and more debt, and we would be ever and ever more enslaved until you see movements like the Yellow Vest movement over in France. And now I actually saw just breaking news as we were talking. They just are having the same protests in Brussels as well. So this is not just a France thing. This is a worldwide thing, and the inflation has to destroy these people's purchasing power, and they're mad as hell at the politicians without understanding that it's actually mostly inflation of the monetary system that have destroyed the whole system.
It's a combination. It's enforced usury and legal tender laws.
They use the inflation, but then the inflation actually forces the government to create mass amounts of taxation because they are getting in debt. So it's the inflation that is the cause of all of this. It's the creation of government, the central planning system. It's the inflating of the monetary system. It's destroyed everything that it takes hold, and it took hold in the government and everywhere else. And now we're seeing the results of it worldwide.
Yeah, it's all hand in hand. These two cartels working together to indebt and enslave the populace. And that is why we as individuals need to break free, and we need to look to self-sustainability, independence, financial understanding, education, folks. That is the key. We need to break free from the centralized system. We need to rule ourselves. We need to look at alternatives to this vast, manipulative, centralized monetary system in our own ways. Anything from gold and silver as purchasing power. This is our opinion, not investment advice. But of course, gold and silver aren't investments anyway. They're wealth insurance, purchasing power. But then there's also, cryptocurrencies that have sound fundamental value that are truly decentralized, which you have to do your own due diligence on. This is all coming full circle. Don't allow history to repeat itself. At least do not succumb to history repeating itself. It's rhyming, it's repeating, and we need to break free as free human beings, understand that which scares us, and let it educate us to be confident in our own survival against this massive organized crime syndicate, this massive system. So thanks for going into this with us, John. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth. Be the change. Like what you see here, OM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored on YouTube, as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. Also, check out our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at steemit.com. We're at Josh Sigurdson. It's a future of social media where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency. Steem, that is. So make sure to check us out there. Make sure to join us at Anarchapulco 2019 with people like Ron Paul, G. Edward Griffin, of course, Jeff Berwick, Vid Jedlicka. So many incredible speakers are going to be speaking. It's just a massively growing event. It is something you have to see to believe. So make sure to check it out below and save money on your tickets by using promo code WAM, that's WAM, and I hope to see you there. Also, check out our newsletter as we are getting demonetized and censored and all that. We don't know what comes next, so we have an email, worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. Send us an email with subject line YES, YES, and we will include you in the newsletter where we will continuously keep you updated. So until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.